a friendship that'll never ever end.
Run!
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Reaction Beanie, yo, 577. That in the neighborhood. My brothers and sisters. Thank God it is Friday once again, Bean Team. And y'all know who we're about to go back to. Adrian from Coffeehouse. Crime! Back to the Coffee Man, y'all. It has been over 2 weeks since we last went to the Coffee Man. And the title of this video is Officers Discover Evil Couple's Horrifying Secret. Now, long story short, long, I'm pretty damn sure that whatever this horrifying secret is, it got something to do with murder. You know what I'm saying, man? Long story short, story long. But I don't know for real, but we're about to see. But before we see, my brothers and sisters, y'all know what y'all got to do. Get whatever you might need. Get what you need, please. We are back to Adrian from Coffeehouse Crime. Y'all got what y'all need, y'all ready to go. Then let's go.
You're under arrest on suspicion of murder. You don't have anything to make how many defense don't mention one question, something for the court. Anything you do say no to give me evidence.
This is Benjamin Atkins and his girlfriend Debbie Pereira, both of whom were arrested for their part in murdering 49-year-old Simon Shotton in their death trap of a home, all for the sake of a mere £30 or $40 US. Believe it or not, some officers wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume they were innocent. However, after a brisk investigation at their property, they quickly realised that Simon had met a bleak and terrible end within their four walls. So, who are Ben and Debbie? What surveillance footage helped them lead to their arrest? And why on earth was Simon murdered, all for the sake of £30? Welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime, folks. My name is Adrian, and today we're travelling to England's southern coastline to look at a gruesome story that happened only last year. Now, it's not that often that we come across a case that seems to be so senseless and brutal. You'll see what I mean in a short while. But these two really did go to prison for a mere few bucks. By the way, I post true crime, strange and chilling stories here on a weekly basis, so if you do like that sort of thing, please consider subscribing, it really does help me out. Thank you, I appreciate you. And now, with all of that said, please grab yourself a coffee and let's caffeinate while we investigate. This is the case of Simon Shotton.
Get whatever you may need. And I'm sitting right here with my face all scrunched up and looking all crazy, y'all, because did the Coffee Man say that they murdered him for $40? Did I hear that correctly? Or did he say freaking $40,000? You know what I'm saying? That's not going to make it no better, but it make more sense than freaking $40. Or maybe he said 400 or 400. But $40 freaking dollars? Oh my God, what the freak?
In today's case, we'll be making the most of the British summer by heading down to the southern coast of England. It is an area brimming with history, spanning recent scars from 2 world wars right through to the Jurassic era. However, if you're more of the urban type, then why not lose yourself in the eclectic city of Plymouth, explore the major port city of Portsmouth, or alternatively, go hunting for the world's best video editor in Brighton and Hove. Hi, Callum. Quite honestly, there is so much to explore in all of these beautiful coastal cities. However, today we're focusing on another one that hasn't been mentioned yet, and that is Bournemouth. So, what can I say about Bournemouth? Well, it's a seaside resort town in the heart of Dorset, and with a population of just under 200,000 residents, it's not a small settlement by any means either. With its mild climate, sandy beaches, amusement parks, and streets filled with restaurants and entertainment venues, it is appreciated by all who visit. However, despite being a peaceful beach town where many come to relax, Bournemouth was thrust into the spotlight last summer under some pretty horrific circumstances. It was on August 26, 2023, in the Boscombe Beach area of East Bournemouth, that families shied away from their busy schedules to enjoy the British summer sun. Dozens made their way down to the beach via its zigzag trail of manor steps, seeking comfort in the gentle coastal breeze. One of those tourists decided to take a break under one of the trees nearby. That is when, suddenly, two wrapped-up bundles tumbled down the cliff beside her, and, as you can imagine, this was highly extraordinary. Curious about what was inside, but also not too worried, she decided to take a look and check them out. But as soon as she unwrapped the first package, she was hit with the terrible stench of decay, and what she saw inside was an indiscernible mess. Trusting her instincts, she decided to call the police, who responded by quickly cordoning off the area. And after investigating the tumbled packages, they found that what they contained were the partial remains of a human body. More precise.
And this remind me so much of what we just watched a couple of days ago from that chapter, the Rando Nautica thing. You know what I'm saying? The most famous case of Rando Nautica. If you know what I'm talking about. And it was a freaking body in different like bags that was found on the beach, similar to this way. Like that's the first thing I thought of.
Precisely, a pair of severed legs. The discovery thoroughly baffled Bournemouth police, but outside of the victim's suggested height and shoe size, the legs alone did not provide much more information. As we all know, human remains often come with the chance to recover a person's DNA, and if the person has a criminal record, well, they then might be in the police database. Fortunately, after only 5 days of analysis, forensic officers and detectives matched this DNA to a man named Simon Shotton, who, at the time, was a 43-year-old who resided in the local area. So, what do we know about Simon? Well, the authorities knew him as somewhat of a drifter, and one who struggled to get by, and often lived wherever he could find shelter. Simon had recently served a sentence for drug possession with intent to supply, but was later released on license and monitored by the probation service. Of course, this eventually assisting with his identification. Before the grim discovery, Simon was seen squatting in the rundown Mon Bijou Hotel found on Manor Road. The security guard who spotted him, named Lee Guagualeni, described him as somewhat of a decent guy. In fact, they'd even exchanged phone numbers so that Simon could avoid the out-of-bounds areas. He didn't want to be a burden on society. It's just that, at the time, he didn't fit in very well. It was noted that, just a few weeks before his remains were found, Simon told Lee that he had moved to a new address on Aylesbury Road, and that, apparently, things were looking better. However, that would be the last time that anyone heard from him. Unfortunately, Simon seemed to struggle from substance abuse from a very young age, but despite his rough childhood and academic struggles, he did turn out to be a rather hard worker as he grew older. Moving into his adulthood, he would take agency, warehouse, and fairground work wherever he could, and would routinely keep in touch with his family, mainly through his mother. To add to that, he engaged in several relationships with women, many of which would eventually result in children. Now, he did do his best to keep in touch with all of them, but, put quite simply, his issues with alcohol and drugs made him a bad father to be around. And that's because his addictions led to a rather chaotic and unstable lifestyle, where he owed money to many people, moved in and out of housing quite regularly, and could never hold down a job. Eventually, general labour was no longer good enough, and he found himself working for the same dealers who fueled his addictions, creating a very vicious cycle. And so, feeling ashamed and powerless to all of it, he decided to shield his family and friends away from his ever-worsening situation, isolating himself far away from their reach. Despite everything, one of his sons, named Wesley, remained particularly close to him, and now, at the tender age of 19, he was to be alerted of his father's death. Even though he wasn't always around, the time they spent together was special and filled with fun memories. Wesley and his dad shared a passion for everything motorsports related, whether it was cars, motorbikes, or anything else and in between. Wesley also knew his dad desperately wanted to turn his life around, not just for the family, but also for himself. But these addictions can be extraordinarily difficult to curb, and it was simply too tough for Simon. His dad was used as a runner for drug gangs, controlled by the higher-ups, and working 12-hour days dealing on the streets. This would eventually lead to his arrest and then his probation, which, as we know, he vanished from soon after in early August.
And him being so involved with the drug gang, even though he don't really want to be involved, but he's so deep off in it, and then he actually addicted to the drugs would make it even worse, you know what I'm saying? So it's like they basically using him because they know that they got what he want. But just him being so involved with the drug gang or whatever, drug game or drug gang, G-A-N-G or G-A-M-E, however you want to put it, just him being so involved with it, y'all, long story short story long, it make you think like his death had something to do with that, you know what I'm saying? But this story, I don't even think that that couple had anything to do with the drug game, or maybe he was getting some drugs or selling some drugs to them. Like, where do these people come in at? It seems so random for them to kill him. I don't know. We ain't even got too far into it yet. I'm already speculating-ish. Let's go.
The police did not have much to go on. Unfortunately, all they had was a phone number and a text message that contained the name of the street that he supposedly moved to, that being Aylesbury Road. So, the next step was to cross-reference these clues and hopefully find their suspect, or maybe suspects. Meanwhile, a thorough investigation was underway to track and locate more evidence, most notably the rest of Simon Shotton's body, which remained out there waiting to be found. Not only would finding the rest of him assist in finding his killer or killers, but it would also bring peace of mind to his grieving family. Simultaneously, investigations were underway to track Simon's phone number and mobile phone, which, as we will soon come to find out, were key articles that blew the case wide open. Now, you're probably going to be surprised by this, but it was discovered that, shortly after his death, his mobile phone had been sold at a local pawn shop named Cash Creators. I'd like to say that this is a classic rookie mistake for any criminal out there, but to be honest, you have to be seriously dumb to do this without thinking of the potential ramifications. As you can imagine, it took only relatively basic police work to progress Simon's case from here on out, as it was soon discovered that the shop had a surveillance camera, and that surveillance footage was seized and investigated. And sure enough, this footage would lead them to a woman who could be seen selling Simon's phone in late August. Since she was a local, she was quite easily identified, and she was 38-year-old Debbie Pereira. It turns out that she wasn't alone while pawning the phone either, because lurking in the background, she was accompanied by a middle-aged man who was later identified as Benjamin Atkins. So,
Y'all got to be some stupid mother, you know what, man, to freaking go pawn the phone of the guy you just killed. The damn camera is right there. You look up. Like, come on, man. What the freak? Don't y'all think that they gon'... I don't even want to go all into it. These people, like, what the fuck are y'all thinking? Like, this don't, like... Some people don't even need to be criminals. Let me take that back, man. Nobody needs to be criminals, but some people just get an F- when it comes to being freaking criminals or something, man. Whatever. Let's freaking go. I know y'all know what I'm saying.
do you remember when I told you that Simon left the shoddy hotel? Well, he had also told the groundskeeper the street name of his new home. And, as you can probably guess already, Debbie and Ben were found to live at flat 18B, found on Aylesbury Road. That was finally enough for officers to visit the couple at their home on September the 1st, 2023. As a result, they were promptly arrested on suspicion of murder, all of which, as part of British standards, was caught on police body cam for the whole world to see.
Right, Debbie, time is 12 minutes past 9. You're under arrest on suspicion of murder. You drove to anything but obey harming defence. Don't mention one question, something for the court.
What do you mean I'm
anything you do, so give me evidence.
What do you mean I'm in suspicion?
Right, just stay sat there.
What do you mean I'm in
Stay where you are.
Stay there.
suspicion?
Right.
Your hands are under that now.
Who is that? Right. Right. You're under arrest on suspicion of murder.
You do not have to say anything that may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. So that's your risk.
At first, leading officer Neil Third had some doubts about their culpability. He did consider that maybe the couple might have merely found the mobile phone on the street and then decided to sell it. However, he couldn't have been more wrong. When officers performed a search of the property and the attached garden, they found solid proof that Debbie and Ben were in fact involved in Simon's murder. And that's because, the very next morning, officers discovered his dismembered arms wrapped up inside their shed in the garden, with this gruesome find adding another piece to the already horrific puzzle. And so,
It's like not only are these people, this couple freaking murderers, they are just stupid too. You know what I'm saying, man? They stupidity is getting on my fucking nerves, man. Like, what the fuck? Why would you leave his arms in your shed? I'm glad y'all that damn dumb too. I'm glad they that goddamn stupid, my brothers and sisters. I'm glad. So we can catch their ass and go give them whatever they deserve for this. And I hope both of them get life at the very least. But it's like, dude, y'all just like, y'all didn't think that how untouchable do you think you are? Like, what? Or do you even care? Or are you just, I don't know, man. This is so freaking mind freaking tingly, like tangly, like freaking just.
As a result, both Debbie and Ben were officially charged with murder only a few days later on September the 4th. Meanwhile, the search for the rest of Simon continued. It was 5 days after Debbie and Ben were arrested that a headless torso was discovered inside a black suitcase found in Boscombe Chine Gardens. While out on a walk, a patrol officer used his nose to follow a foul smell lingering in the air. Sadly, the stench of death is a unique and familiar scent that law enforcement eventually gets used to. And of course, this led him to the grim discovery. A post-mortem on the legs and torso revealed that, although the amputations were clean, they were not conducted surgically, suggesting an amateur attempt was made to dismember Simon. However, despite all of this new evidence, his head still seemed to be missing. The police therefore had to rely on strict interrogation tactics and more rigorous investigation to locate the rest of him. But,
And I gotta point this out real quick too, y'all, because I got this feeling, man. I got this feeling that even though they are red-handed caught, you know what I'm saying? One or both of them gonna still plead not guilty. You know what? They still gonna say they ain't do it. One of them gonna say it at least, man. And it's like they trying to be smart because they leave in different body parts in different areas, but it's like, dude, at the same time, your smartness is the most dumbest shit I ever seen in my life because of everything else that y'all did. You took his phone to a pawn shop, really?
before we continue, who precisely were Ben and Debbie? The couple which now seemed deeply entangled in this terrible story. Starting with Ben, he grew up in the northern part of Oxford with his single mother. Unfortunately, he did have a rough childhood, especially after his mum got involved with an abusive man who would later become his stepdad. Ben's only support was his grandmother, who sadly died when he was only a teenager. This devastated him quite dramatically and pushed him into the world of drugs during the 90s rave scene. Over the next couple of decades, he routinely cycled through periods of getting clean and then relapsing, eventually training as a carpenter before then drifting and moving around for work. It was after a violent breakup in Bristol that he then connected with Debbie Perriera through Facebook. Concerningly, the two of them took no time to protect their peace or assess each other sensibly, instead rushing into things by haphazardly opting to move in together in Bournemouth. Although Ben claimed that he had children in the area, his larger commitment was crime. He had a long rap sheet with 16 convictions and 26 offences, showing a stained history of instability and trouble with the law. Debbie, on the other hand, had her own troubled history, one that was filled with abusive relationships with men who should have protected her. But despite Ben's history and his behaviour, something unique about him drew her towards him. You know, maybe he was charming, or maybe he was funny, or maybe there was something that she could see that nobody else could. You know, that classic trope. Either way, it soon became evident to everyone around them that the two were damaged in a very similar way. So, could that be a blessing or a nightmarish curse? Well, with the way that this story goes, I'm sure that you can come to your own conclusion. Debbie claims that she had a horrendously tough and loveless upbringing, and was forced to be adopted by her aunt after her mother gave birth to her at a very young age. Sadly, her adoptive father was very abusive towards her too, and tragically, his friends who visited them the home often would abuse her from an extraordinarily young age. In contrast to this, her step-siblings did not get the same treatment. She was singled out from the other children in the house, which only compounded her grief and isolation. Understandably, these experiences built an unhealthy relationship with men in general for Debbie, and throughout her adulthood, she found herself in one abusive relationship after another, calling the police to report domestic abuse on multiple occasions. So it may be no surprise that with this abusive and unhappy existence came substance abuse issues too, as she was introduced to heroin at the age of 29 by her partner, which led to a habit that would last for over a decade and until the year that this case takes place.
Now this shit starting to make a lot more sense, my brothers and sisters. And we've been watching videos about people being on freaking drugs for a while now. Mr. Ballin just talked about dude on some freaking drugs. Mike from that chapter this week was talking about a drug case. And now we got another one, heroin. That's why the freak they did what they did. You know what I'm saying, man? Say no to drugs. Say no. We learned that. They learned that back in elementary school. What was it? Dare? Y'all know Dare? Y'all remember Dare? Back when we was in elementary school? Like, come on, man.
Debbie also has 2 kids, who now are aged 16 and 19, though no surprise, she has little contact with them considering her lifestyle. When the two first locked eyes on one another, she was quite pleased to meet Ben. She was looking for someone to lean on, and he seemed more supportive and caring than her previous partners. Though, as we will soon find out, he also had his own issues with control and possessiveness. Prior to meeting him, Debbie was trying to get clean, but unfortunately she relapsed, which led to the two meeting inside a rehab facility. Neither of them seemed to be particularly enthusiastic about recovery, which only contributed to them poorly enabling each other once they got out. When Ben did finally get out and then proceeded to get in touch with Debbie, she was ready to dive back into her addictive lifestyle with him. Debbie also had a history with law enforcement, by the way, with 12 convictions and 19 offences on record. So, given all of this information, it is actually quite clear and obvious how Simon got involved with the two of them in the first place. However, one question remains here. Why were his remains scattered around Bournemouth? Not surprising to this story, but both Ben and Debbie were avid drug users. Not only that, but they frequented the many dealing spots where Simon worked. So, after hearing about Simon's rather unfortunate circumstances, the two then offered him a place to stay in their tent in a garden. Quite the offer there, guys. With nowhere else to go, he reluctantly accepted their offer. However, that did not come without a price. In exchange for a safe camping spot found in their garden, he would have to pay Ben and Debbie £40 or $50 worth of cocaine and heroin per day. Which to me sounds like an insanely bad rip-off. I mean, doing the maths, that's like £1,500 a month. You could easily get a 2-bedroom apartment for that. Anyway, That was the last place that Simon was known to be alive before his remains were found, leaving Ben and Debbie in very hot water. In addition to this, both Ben and Debbie had been caught selling Simon's mobile phone with surveillance footage to back that up. In fact, they were even caught on camera shoplifting a crucial piece of evidence, that being a large hacksaw which can be seen in Benjamin's hand on surveillance camera. And so, with the pair now in custody and the evidence stacking up around them, it is safe to say that it was in their best interests to come clean in an effort to reduce whatever sentence they would face. This was especially pertinent on behalf of Debbie, as she would ascertain that she had little to do with the actual murder itself. Both suspects were questioned separately, and when their stories matched each other and the evidence was recovered from various crime scenes, a gruesome scene could be painted to depict Simon's terrible demise. Ben's own mobile phone records show that he was privately messaging Simon behind Debbie's back in an attempt to obtain more drugs without her knowing. To add to this, he also seemed to be blackmailing Simon by threatening to tell his probation officer about his illegal activities if he didn't comply in giving him more drugs. Tensions between the three were raised even further when Simon actively defended Debbie once Ben became irate, aggressive, and abusive towards her. She also confided in Simon about their relationship, further swaying his own opinion of the couple. Now, I don't need to tell you that the atmosphere became excruciatingly tense between the three of them, and with their close proximity in a one-bedroom flat, it forced them to live chaotically together. Honestly, at this point, I simply would have run away and lived alone in the woods. Mobile phone records which were retrieved from all three of them show a tense situation that came to a head on the night of August the 17th, 2023. This was when Ben was accused of stealing £30, the equivalent of $40, from Simon in order to buy more drugs. After this, Simon messaged a friend to say that he no longer felt safe staying with the couple. He was very scared of his environment and wanted to find somewhere else to stay, though sadly, such safety would only come a little too late. It was on a warm summer's evening that all three of them were inside the small one-bedroom flat, while Ben and Debbie were high as kites. It was at that moment that, while cooked out of his skull, Ben accused Simon of stealing money from him yet again. The confrontation sparked a fight between the two of them. Understandably quite scared, Debbie retreated to the bedroom while the other two skirmished. Eventually, a knife was brought into the fray. Now, Ben didn't specify where the knife came from, who had it first, or what type of knife it was. However, he did admit to one being present at the time. As a result, both parties in the fight sustained multiple defense wounds, though Simon sadly would take the brunt of the damage. The fight was so violent and chaotic that the walls of the utility room were spattered with blood from floor to ceiling. After relinquishing the knife, Ben violently finished Simon off by striking him over the head with a portable speaker. The assault was both ferocious and unnecessary in the situation, and Simon was weak and posed very little threat to Ben. Put quite simply, Simon had been run ragged by drug gangs, was in chronic pain, had restricted use of his right arm, and was suffering from COPD, more commonly known as emphysema. This essentially meaning that he was easily exhausted and out of breath. Given all of this information, it is hard to paint a picture where he outwardly posed a threat towards Ben.
Exactly.
In fact, those who saw Simon in the days before this incident happened did comment on how tired and unwell he looked. While Ben, on the other hand, was not only stronger but had a much more significant advantage, leaving this entire attack absolutely unwarranted. Sadly, this fight would ultimately end in Simon's death. He had defensive wounds on his hands and arms, and had 12 stab wounds on his chest, shoulders, and back. Once he had fallen down, Simon begged and screamed for help. But instead, Ben gouged both of his eyes out with his thumbs before smashing his head with a speaker. So, you might be wondering what exactly happened to Debbie. Well, the sad truth is that she didn't actually care too much. Instead, she stayed right by Ben's side. After this sickening incident, the couple sold Simon's phone, shoplifted the hacksaw, and got to work on dismembering his body. Most of that final action was undertaken by Ben in the utility room, where he meticulously referenced an anatomy book in an effort to dismember the body systematically. Ben admitted he could never have dismembered Simon without being severely under the influence, and he took copious amounts of drugs before doing it. Afterwards, he started a fire in their garden and tried to burn the body parts, starting with his head. This went on for several days, and in the meantime, neighbours noticed the putrid smell, which Ben and Debbie explained away by claiming it was a dead fox. But when the head wouldn't burn completely, Ben decided to dump the remaining pieces in Walpole Lane. Now, this particular piece of information did not come out until February of 2024, which was 5 months after the murder. Skull fragments recovered from the area were positively identified as Simon Shodden, giving the authorities the final piece of the gruesome puzzle. Now, although Ben was the main instigator, Debbie was not free of guilt. After the attack and dismemberment, she helped cover up the crime scene and dispose of the body. Furthermore,
And that's why she guilty as well. You know what I'm saying? That's why I look at her, even though I know she didn't actually carry out the crime or actually gouge out Simon eyes or whatever, and he killed him or whatever. You know what I'm saying? We know she didn't actually partake in the act of the murder. Long story short, story long, what I'm trying to say. But regardless of that, just the fact that after he did it, she was right there hand in hand with him, helping him dismember the body, hide the body, all that. You just as freaking guilty, man. She need to go to prison for the rest of her damn life too. Seriously.
More, she spent several days cleaning the blood-splattered utility room before Ben then repainted the walls. She would also sell Simon's phone and help shoplift the saw and dispose of the body parts. So it's safe to say that neither of them showed any remorse towards Simon's murder. I mean, Ben even seemed proud about it, saying to Debbie in a police vehicle, "I'll look him straight in the eye and say, yeah, I'll do it again and again and again. If you let me go today, I would find another one and do it again. Drug dealers and pushers. Kill, decapitate, and eat the bastards." Tragically, he also joked about how Simon had begged for his life and even urinated in his pants before he died. The pain and fear that Simon must have felt must have been absolutely unbearable. Of course, Ben would argue that he acted in self-defense and had no choice but to fight when confronted by Simon. However, Simon's poor physical health contradicted this claim. With mounting evidence and confessions from both Ben and Debbie, court proceedings began in May 2024 at Winchester Crown Court. The pair still seemed to show no genuine remorse, though they did offer empty words of regret to Simon's family, who were present at the trials. During this time, the judge rightly stated, "The violence you used was ferocious, unnecessary, wholly out of proportion. You were by far the stronger. He was of no threat to you." So, with their trials finally concluded, they were ultimately found guilty, but to differing degrees. Benjamin Atkins would receive a life sentence with a minimum of 19 years for murdering his lodger and scattering his body parts across Bournemouth. Debbie, on the other hand, was sentenced to 4 years for perverting the course of justice and preventing the burial of a corpse. The prosecution pointed out that, had she called the police when she saw the fight happening, Simon might even still be alive. This was a painful realization for Simon's own family members, who were present during the time of their sentencing. His close
Yeah, this some BS right here, man. Hold the freak on, man. 4 years, that's it? That's all she got? Now, I was saying that I think she should have got life in prison, but 4 years? He got life without, he got life in parole, a possibility of parole after 19 years. After 19 years, I would have made it after 49 years, you know what I'm saying? But I'm good with his sentence. This is why I gave it a thumb up. But 4 years, if I just be realistic with it, y'all, she should at least get 15 at the very least. Even though if I was running it, she'll be locked up for life too. I don't know, man. That 4 years is not right.
Closest family member, that being his son Wesley, had his victim impact statement shared by the barrister, in which he said, "My father used drink and drugs to escape the battles in his mind. The lengths you've gone in destroying my dad are completely different. There was no opportunity for us to visit his body, to tell him we loved him, to kiss him goodbye. I just loved our time together. I was every bit my daddy's boy." The judge stressed that this case was one of the largest and most complex in the history of Dorset police, with hundreds of officers from different forces involved in the search for Simon's remains. Simon Shodden leaves behind his children, his parents, and his sister to mourn his premature death. This is particularly saddening as he had little contact with many of them before passing away, leaving no opportunity for them to be reunited, and therefore exacerbating their loss. It is true, Simon did struggle with his mental health and substance abuse problems, though throughout he always expressed the intention of getting clean, not just for himself, but for those that he loved. By the way, it was a very notable feature of this case that all witnesses who knew Simon only spoke of his warmth and kindness towards others, and it seemed that no one had a bad word to say about him or his character. Instead, they expressed sadness that he had been denied the opportunity to turn his life around and reconnect with his family. Simon Shodden never deserved the brutal fate that befell him, all of which were at the hands of a violent and selfish individual and his willing accomplice. The only comfort that his family can receive is that his murderers are now behind bars and unable to take advantage of any other vulnerable individuals in the future. Rest in peace, Simon. So anyway, I think I'm going to end this video here today, folks. All in all, this is a very sad story, and has left 3 sets of children without a parent. What I will say is that addiction is a terrible beast hidden in plain sight. It destroys people and their lives, and is something that many of us on the outside can't even comprehend. There is a degree of absolute powerlessness when it comes to addiction, not just for those within it, but to all of those around too. Anyway, if this sort of thing has affected you or anyone that you know, I implore you to check out the links in the description down below. Anyway, I'm keen to hear what you think about this case and your opinions around it. For one, what do you think about Simon's situation and the fate that he had found? And 2, do you think that Debbie and Ben got the sentences they deserved? As always, share your thoughts in the comments section down below. And by the way, if you want to support me and the channel, check out my Patreon here, or alternatively, check out my social media here, most notably my Instagram. Anyway folks, that's it, so thank you so much for watching, and by the way, I'm now back in full swing, so I'll see you again very soon for another one. Until that moment arrives though, remember to look after yourself, look after each other, and as always, stay safe. Thank you, and goodbye.
Another Coffee Man Friday, y'all. And I know I may be sounding like I be making jokes, or I be trying to, like, it may seem like I be coming off as trying to be funny when I be saying say no to drugs, but no, man, I really mean that is, y'all. And I know it may sound like I'm talking to little kids when I say that, but no, I'm talking to us, my brothers and sisters, the grown-ups, man. Because if you remember what Coffee Man said, she didn't get on freaking heroin till she was 29. She had been an adult for a long ass time by then, over 10 years. You know what I'm saying? She had been a freaking adult, man. Like, people can get on, it don't matter your age, man, that you can become a freaking addict. Long story short, short story long. And that stuff is real, y'all. Like, I got people that I grew up with, and I'm not finna say no names, I'm not finna go into no details or nothing. All I'm saying is I got people that I grew up with, people that I was once friends with and all that, who end up on that. I'm not gonna even call out the stuff that they ended up on, and we no longer are no longer friends. Long story short, story long, because I had to cut them off, man. I had to let them go, man, because the freaking drugs will freaking destroy you, and not only destroy you, destroy your family, all of your friends, anybody around you, man. It's just freaking terrible. Rest in peace to Simon, man. He was just caught up in a bad situation from the beginning. You know what I'm saying? Just him being around those drugs, then getting involved with a freaking couple on drugs. Not only are you dealing with one person, then not to mention he was on them, but I'm just saying not to mention you're dealing with one crazy mother on this ish. You dealing with double the trouble, both of them on it. And even though this my last thing, man, I ain't gonna hold y'all too much longer. This my last thing. Even though that I can't remember this lady name. I'm glad I don't remember her name, but the lady who was involved in the murder, the girlfriend of the freaking murder couple, I'm glad. I know I'm not glad. I'm just kind of like just mad. Like, I am mad. I'm mad at the fact that she only got 4 years, man. That kind of sticking with me. Like, what the fuck? She should have got longer. She helped clean up the crime scene, helped dispose of the body, didn't call the freaking police and tell nobody. Like, what, when it sold his freaking cell phone, she right there on the CCTV footage. Like, no, bro, she should have got more than what she got. That's the thing that really just got me on this one. But I digress. Like I said, man, I ain't finna go on and on and on, my brothers and sisters. I just appreciate y'all coming on back as always. And before y'all leave, just please hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and do all that if you ain't did that yet. And come on back tomorrow. I don't know where we going, but we gonna go. And until then, my friends, also, remember this. Love, peace, and happiness. Stay safe. Don't stop. Keep going. Yeah.